23 minutes, that's how long it took for an explosion to level an entire town, kill over 500 people, and change industrial safety laws forever. Yet most people have never heard of it because the government classified the details for 30 years. Meanwhile, disasters you do know about had their death tolls deliberately minimized, their causes covered up, and their lessons ignored so the same catastrophes could happen again. They taught you about Chernobyl. They mentioned Bhopal. They showed you grainy footage of industrial accidents. But what they didn't tell you is that the 5 deadliest disasters in modern history share one terrifying pattern. Every single one was predicted by engineers who were ignored. Every single one killed far more people than official counts admit. And every single one resulted in 0 criminal prosecutions for the executives who made the decisions that killed thousands. What I'm about to reveal aren't random accidents or acts of God. These are 5 catastrophic failures: explosions, chemical leaks, nuclear meltdowns, and structural collapses, ranked by death toll and historical impact. In the next 20 minutes, you're going to discover why a fertilizer explosion in Texas killed more people in 15 seconds than most terrorist attacks. You'll learn how a dam failure in China killed 230,000 people in one night and remained classified for 14 years. You'll find out why a chemical leak in India is still causing birth defects 40 years later. You'll see how a nuclear meltdown created a dead zone larger than New York City. And you'll understand why a mine explosion killed over 1,000 men who suffocated slowly in darkness while writing goodbye letters their families wouldn't find for weeks. Each disaster changed history by exposing systematic failures in how corporations calculate risk and how governments protect industries instead of people. Each one proved that warnings are ignored when safety costs money. And each one established a precedent that still governs disaster response today. Minimize the death toll, control the narrative, and ensure that no executive ever goes to jail no matter how many people die. These 5 disasters killed over 340,000 people combined. But the horror isn't just the body count. It's that every death was preventable, every disaster was predicted, and every lesson was deliberately ignored so profits could continue. Starting with number 5, an explosion so powerful it registered on seismographs 100 miles away, yet the company responsible claimed it was unforeseeable. April 16, 2013, 7:50 p.m. The West Fertilizer Company plant in West, Texas, a small town of 2,800 people, was storing approximately 270 tons of ammonium nitrate in a wooden storage shed. Ammonium nitrate is the same chemical that Timothy McVeigh used to destroy the Oklahoma City Federal Building. It's an explosive material that requires careful storage, monitoring, and safety protocols. The West Fertilizer plant had none of these. The facility hadn't been inspected by federal safety officials since 1985, 28 years. The last time the Occupational Safety and Health Administration visited the plant, Ronald Reagan was president. In the nearly 3 decades since, the plant had repeatedly violated safety regulations, failed to file required reports about hazardous materials, and ignored recommendations from fire safety officials. The plant was located in the middle of a residential area. Within the immediate blast radius were a nursing home with 133 residents, an apartment complex housing dozens of families, a middle school with 150 students, and a high school with 400 students. This violated federal guidelines that require hazardous chemical facilities to maintain safety distances from residential areas. But the guidelines had never been enforced. On the evening of April 16th, a fire started in the plant. Volunteer firefighters from the small town responded. They were local people, teachers, store owners, farmers who volunteered their time to protect their community. They arrived at the plant and began fighting the fire. What they didn't know was that the wooden storage shed was engulfed and that the 270 tons of ammonium nitrate inside was heating toward detonation temperature. At 7:50 p.m., approximately 20 minutes after firefighters arrived, the ammonium nitrate detonated. The explosion released energy equivalent to approximately 20,000 pounds of TNT. It registered as a magnitude 2.1 earthquake. It was heard 50 miles away. It created a crater 93 feet wide and 10 feet deep. And it killed 15 people instantly, including 12 of the volunteer firefighters who'd been trying to save the plant. The blast wave destroyed everything within a quarter-mile radius. The nursing home collapsed, killing or injuring dozens of elderly residents. The apartment complex disintegrated. Over 150 buildings were damaged or destroyed. The middle school, which was fortunately closed at the time, was so badly damaged it had to be demolished. But here's what makes this explosion particularly damning. It was entirely preventable and had been predicted by multiple safety experts. In 2012, 1 year before the explosion, a fire safety consultant inspected the plant and filed a report warning that the ammonium nitrate storage violated multiple safety codes and that fire could cause catastrophic explosion. The report was filed with local officials. Nothing was done. In 2006, 7 years before the explosion, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality cited the plant for failing to have a risk management plan as required by federal law. The plant was supposed to assess explosion risks and implement safety measures. They never completed the required assessment. The violation was documented. No enforcement action was taken. The plant's owner, Donald Adair, knew about the risks. Internal documents obtained after the explosion show that plant management had discussed the danger of storing large quantities of ammonium nitrate in wooden structures. They knew it was dangerous. They chose not to invest in proper storage because it was expensive. After the explosion, investigators found that the plant had been storing nearly 1,400 times the amount of ammonium nitrate that triggers federal reporting requirements. Yet they'd told federal officials they had only 400 tons on site. They'd systematically lied about how much explosive material they were storing in the middle of a residential neighborhood. The 15 deaths, tragic as they are, represent only the immediate toll. Over 200 people were injured, many permanently. The town's economy was devastated. Insurance losses exceeded $100 million. And the psychological trauma affected the entire community of 2,800 people who watched their town explode. Investigation into the West Fertilizer explosion revealed systemic regulatory failure. The plant hadn't been inspected in 28 years because OSHA was chronically underfunded and understaffed. Federal regulations existed but weren't enforced. State regulations existed but were voluntary. The result was a regulatory system that created the appearance of safety oversight while providing none. Stop and think about this for a moment. 270 tons of explosive material stored in a wooden shed in the middle of a residential neighborhood for years. With federal regulators aware of the situation and doing nothing, with local officials aware and doing nothing, with safety experts filing warnings that were ignored, until 12 volunteer firefighters died trying to save a facility that should never have been allowed to operate. Now here's what should terrify you. The West Fertilizer Company was not prosecuted. Donald Adair, the owner, faced no criminal charges for the 15 deaths. The company paid fines, approximately $118,000 total, and then dissolved through bankruptcy, limiting civil liability. The executives walked away. The families of the dead firefighters received workers' compensation payments because their loved ones died in the line of duty, not because anyone was held criminally responsible for creating the hazard that killed them. This pattern of disasters that were predicted, warnings that were ignored, and executives who face no consequences repeats through the next 4 disasters, each one deadlier than the last, each one completely preventable, each one resulting in essentially zero accountability. March 10, 1906, 6:30 a.m. The Courrières coal mine in northern France, the largest coal mine in Europe, exploded when accumulated coal dust ignited from a miner's lamp. The initial explosion killed approximately 200 miners instantly. But 1,100 more were trapped underground in various sections of the mine, cut off from the surface by collapsed tunnels and deadly carbon monoxide gas. The horror of Courrières isn't just the death toll. It's how the trapped miners died, slowly in complete darkness over days or weeks, knowing rescue was impossible. When the explosion occurred, it destroyed the main access shafts and filled miles of tunnels with lethal carbon monoxide. Miners in deep sections had no way to signal the surface, no light once their lamps exhausted their fuel, no food, and no water except contaminated groundwater seeping through the tunnels. Rescue efforts began immediately but faced impossible conditions. The main shafts were collapsed. Gas concentrations were lethal. Rescue teams couldn't ascend without breathing apparatus that didn't exist in 1906. They attempted to dig alternative shafts, but the mine extended over 400 meters deep. Digging new access would take weeks. Meanwhile, underground, trapped miners faced unimaginable horror. Complete darkness once their lamps died, no communication with the surface, no way to know if rescue was coming or if they'd been abandoned. The slow realization that they were going to die there. Some miners wrote letters to their families using chalk or coal dust on tunnel walls or on scraps of paper. These letters documented their final days. Initial hope, growing despair, final acceptance, messages to wives and children, apologies, expressions of. One letter found with miner August Burton's body 3 weeks later read, April 1st, we are 23 men in this section, the air is bad, we can barely breathe, we hear nothing from above, the darkness is complete, we cannot see each other, Pierre died today, April 3rd, now we are 19, the air grows worse, we are too weak to move. Tell Marie I love her, tell my son to be strong, we tried to survive. August's body was found with 11 others who had survived the initial explosion only to suffocate slowly in darkness over approximately 5 days. They'd been conscious, aware, writing farewell messages, listening to each other die one by one. Rescue teams eventually reached various sections over weeks. They found bodies everywhere. Most had died from carbon monoxide poisoning within hours, but some sections had been sealed off from the gas and had breathable air. In those sections, miners survived for days or even weeks before dying of dehydration, starvation, or despair. Several miners were found with self-inflicted wounds, having chosen quick death over slow dying in darkness. The final death toll reached 1,099 miners. But here's what makes Courrières particularly damning. It was entirely preventable. French mining regulations in 1906 required regular dust suppression with water spray to prevent coal dust accumulation. The Courrières mine systematically ignored this requirement because water spray reduced productivity. Management chose profit over safety. The mine had experienced smaller coal dust explosions in 1904 and 1905, clear warnings that dust levels were dangerous. After each incident, miners petitioned for better ventilation and dust suppression. Management rejected these requests as too expensive. When the catastrophic explosion occurred in 1906, it happened exactly as miners and safety experts had predicted. The company that operated Courrières, the Compagnie des Mines de Huile de Courrières, paid compensation to victims' families, approximately 300 francs per death, equivalent to about 6 months' wages for a miner. No executives were criminally charged. The company continued operating. French mining regulations were nominally strengthened, but enforcement remained minimal. December 3, 1984, 12:40 a.m. Union Carbide's pesticide plant in Bhopal, India released 45 tons of methyl isocyanate gas, a chemical so toxic that exposure to just 2 parts per million can be lethal within minutes. The gas sank into densely populated slums surrounding the plant where 500,000 people lived. 3,800 people died in the first 72 hours. The death toll eventually exceeded 16,000 with over 500,000 injured. It remains the deadliest industrial disaster in history. Aziza Sultan woke up unable to breathe. Her throat was on fire, she couldn't see, she heard her children choking. She grabbed them and ran outside, but outside was worse. The air itself was poison. She fell over bodies in the street. She lost her 3-year-old son's hand in the chaos. She never found him. Her husband died in the street. Her 9-year-old daughter died in a hospital. Aziza survived with permanent lung damage, but the immediate deaths were just the beginning. Women exposed to the gas have miscarriage rates exceeding 50%. Birth defect rates are 12 times higher than baseline. Union Carbide abandoned the plant, leaving thousands of tons of toxic chemicals that leached into groundwater. Testing in 2018 showed contamination 6 million times higher than safe limits. Children born today near the plant show genetic damage and developmental disabilities. Union Carbide knew the plant was unsafe. 6 safety systems designed to prevent catastrophic leaks had been shut down or disabled to save money. Engineers had warned management that leak was inevitable. The warnings were documented. They were ignored. Union Carbide CEO Warren Anderson flew to India after the disaster, was briefly arrested, then released on bail and immediately fled the country. He lived freely in the United States until his death in 2014 at age 92, never spending a night in jail for 16,000 deaths. April 26, 1986, 1:23 a.m. Reactor number 4 at Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded during a safety test, releasing massive quantities of radioactive material across Europe. The Soviet government claimed 31 people died. The real death toll exceeds 90,000. The official count includes only immediate deaths from the explosion and acute radiation syndrome in the first 4 months. It excludes 830,000 liquidators sent to clean up the disaster. Between 112,000 and 125,000 liquidators died before 2005 from radiation-induced cancers. It excludes civilians in contaminated areas where thyroid cancer rates increased over 1,000%. It excludes the ongoing deaths from cancers that continue today. Leonid Toptunov, the reactor control engineer who pressed the emergency shutdown button, died within 2 weeks from acute radiation syndrome. His skin fell off. His organs liquefied. He died in agony. His death is counted. Alexander Petrovich, a 24-year-old soldier who shoveled radioactive debris for 90 seconds during cleanup, developed leukemia and died at age 33. His death is not counted. The explosion was entirely preventable. Soviet engineers knew the RBMK reactor design was unstable at low power. They'd warned about the control rod defect that caused the power spike. The warnings were rejected as too expensive to fix. The disaster occurred exactly as predicted. August 8, 1975, 1:47 a.m. The Banqiao Dam in China's Henan province catastrophically failed, releasing 700 million cubic meters of water in a wave 20 feet high moving at 31 miles per hour. The flood killed approximately 86,000 people immediately through drowning. Disease and starvation in the aftermath killed another 145,000. Total death toll, 230,000 people. The dam had been called the Iron Dam by Chinese officials who claimed it was indestructible. Engineers had warned for 23 years that the dam was inadequate. Hydrologist Chen Xing warned in 1952 that the design needed 12 sluice gates to handle extreme storms. Party officials approved only 5 because 12 was too expensive. When Typhoon Nina approached, weather forecasters warned the dam would fail and recommended emergency water releases. Local officials refused because releasing water would flood a military facility downstream. They chose to protect a building over 230,000 lives. The dam failed exactly as predicted. The first village downstream, population 17,000, had a 3% survival rate. Most died in their beds before they could wake up. 62 dams failed in Cascade. The flood covered 4,600 square miles. The Chinese government classified the disaster as a state secret and hid the death toll for 14 years. Nobody was prosecuted. Officials who rejected safety recommendations retired with honors. The 5 disasters ranked by death toll. Number 5, West Fertilizer explosion, 15 deaths. Number 4, Courrières mine, 1,099 deaths. Number 3, Bhopal chemical leak, 16,000 deaths and ongoing. Number 2, Chernobyl nuclear disaster, 90,000 deaths. Number 1, Banqiao dam failure, 230,000 deaths. Total across all 5, 341,114 deaths. Every single disaster was predicted. Every single warning was ignored. In almost every case, decision-makers faced zero criminal prosecution. The pattern is identical. Warnings ignored because safety costs money, disasters occur exactly as predicted, death tolls minimized to protect industries, executives walk free. This isn't failure. This is the system working as designed. Your life is a cost-benefit calculation, and preventing your death costs more than compensating your family after you're dead. Now you know the 5 deadliest disasters that changed history. 341,000 deaths combined, all predicted, all preventable, almost zero accountability. West Fertilizer changed chemical storage laws, Courrières changed mining regulations, Bhopal created international chemical safety protocols, Chernobyl changed nuclear safety standards, Banqiao changed nothing because China kept it secret for 14 years. You can research facilities near your home. Chemical plants, dams, mines, their safety records are public. You can demand criminal liability for executives whose cost-cutting kills. You can refuse to accept that 341,000 preventable deaths resulted in zero jail time for decision-makers, which shocked you most. That Banqiao killed more than all the others combined. That warnings existed for every disaster. Or that executives walked free. Comment below, subscribe for more investigations. These 341,000 people died because someone decided profit mattered more than their lives. Don't let them be forgotten.